This is the new version of the donut espresso shaker. Today I will explain how to print the shaker so that as little coffee as possible remains on the shaker without further work after printing, and much more. As an espresso nerd, I follow the latest developments around the perfect preparation of espresso, and after watching Lance Hedrick's video, I thought, why not develop a shaker specially designed for 3D printing, which offers a pleasant workflow for all portafilter sizes and possibly even solve the problem with under-extracted sides without having to buy a new expensive basket. In other words, intentionally creating a donut extraction. I'm currently testing whether this really works, but the initial results are already promising. You can find more about this and why a donut extraction on the project page and here in the future. There are already versions for 4 different portafilter sizes, each with or without a portafilter holder, so that you can attach the shaker directly to the corresponding grinders, and since the update the holder is rounded. In addition, the shaker is now slightly larger so that the user experience remains pleasant even with large quantities of coffee. Everything is stable and fits together well. I deliberately avoided curves in the design in order to achieve a more even print image, which should result in less coffee sticking. This also makes it much easier to sand, should you decide to do so. I made sure from the outset that the design could use without further processing and without a lot of coffee sticking. To achieve this, there are currently 3 different bolts, all of which I've tested extensively for stability and usefulness. The tips are now adapted so that hardly any coffee remains on them when you fill the shaker with grounds, and the print image remains nice despite the tip. To ensure stability, the bolt should be printed with 5 walls or perimeters, but I also recommend using 100% infill to get a higher quality feel from the weight when using them. The first bolt has a steep angle so that ground coffee slides down nicely, but to get a smooth result you have to sand it. So the other bolts are flat in order to achieve a smooth surface without sanding with some printing tricks. The first flat bolt can be printed in one piece, has a slight angle to ensure stability, and thanks to the ironing function, the surface is very smooth straight from the printer. The second flat bolt consists of 2 parts that have to be assembled with an M4 screw. This allows the flat side to be printed on a smooth printing plate and the handle to lie on its side to create a stable and flat result. Of course, even less coffee sticks to it. I also used the ironing function for the lids for the same reason. Here you can see lids after use with and without the ironing function. I also recommend that you use PETG if you decide against sanding. It's usually smoother than PLA. At the end I'll show you a comparison of how much coffee sticks with the different approaches and give you a few simple tips to get a less sticky result without doing much work and more. If you have a fitting problem, there are also lids with more tolerance and you can simply scale the bolts 1 to 3% if necessary, so you don't have to reprint the main part. I printed the black shaker with the fuzzy skin option. I think it looks quite good. I also used a pre-release version of the Orca slicer to minimize the C-seam on the bolt. Works quite well, but is no longer visible due to the sanding. You can find a comparison picture in the 3D printing coffee Reddit. Here are the shakers after use and some additional tips. With the PETG version straight from the printer, about 0.1 gram remains after use, as far as my scale can determine. With the sanded version, only fine coffee dust remains, the weight of which I cannot measure. First tip: if you have a lot more stuck coffee, cleaning once with 80 to 99% cleaning alcohol could help, at least it did for me. Second tip: stronger RDT helps, even if I haven't used it here. Just remember, if you do it in the donut espresso shaker, wipe it out briefly afterwards, otherwise a lot will stick. When grinding, I use the lid to guide the ground coffee better into the shaker, which is very practical with the DF64P. Third tip: the ironing feature sometimes doesn't work well, in which case I recommend deactivating it and use a variable layer height instead to be able to set very fine layers on the upper surfaces without stretching the printing time enormously. Also, you can only sand the lid, as this is sanded very quickly. By the way, it took me 15 minutes to sand everything. If you want to use epoxy resin to achieve the ultimate result, try it out. There are some instructions for this, for example from Pruthert himself. After this update, the Donut Espresso Shaker has become a real alternative to commercially available solutions for me, especially for smaller portafilters, as the commercially available solutions no longer produce the desired result. This is because the inwardly inclined angle no longer has any effect here. With the Donut Espresso Shaker, this is adapted for every size. The only major problem is the coffee sticking because of the electrostatic charge, but this also seems to be a big problem with some metal versions. However, I have managed to get this under control very well with my solutions, even if you don't want to do anything else after printing. Of course, you can't get the metal feeling with a 3D print, but the stable design and 100% infill can make a big difference here. That's all. If you try it out, keep in mind that the espresso runs through faster than usual. Feel free to leave feedback and have a good espresso. And in the next few days, I will test how good the extraction yield really is.